You are listening to the audio project with Deena Tearney. This podcast is recorded from my office in downtown Honolulu and welcomes you to join in the conversations I have on technology, business, and all things Salesforce. All right. Thank you, Christy, for coming into the office today. So this is like the green room now because we have plants and all the plants moved into this office.
I love it, and you've got great views.
Yeah,
so
I can't beat it.
Yeah.
So today's topic is about women in technology. So thank you for joining me today on the podcast. One thing I'm super passionate about is inspiring youth to pursue careers in technology. And so I'd love to hear your story. And I think specifically girls. I'm actually an upcoming speaker for a science symposium centered on 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. We're even going to be doing a Salesforce lemonade stand app build assignment, a breakout session during the symposium. So I'm super excited about that. But I feel like it's great to hear about people's journey, but also to help kids understand, what the pathways are, because they're not always linear, right? And so anyways, I'm excited to have a woman in technology here on the podcast. So Christy, I feel like our careers, although very different, I feel like there's some similarity, and I think part of it's because I know that you did work on Siebel CRM.
That's correct, even though we may be dating ourselves.
I know,
but
I'm almost embarrassed to bring it up now, and I'm like, God, I feel really old when I said that. But CRM is part of my background. I feel like it's something I'm very confident in. I understand really well. I think that there's a lot of people in the Salesforce space that came from that world, and I think you're one of them just like me. So anyways, I thought it'd be good to let you introduce yourself, where you work, what you do in your job.
Yes. Well, thanks for having me, first of all. It's cold in Denver, so it's great to be out here in Hawaii. But yeah, so I'm Christy Wood. I'm a solution engineer with Salesforce. I've been at Salesforce for about a year and a half now. Prior to coming to Salesforce, I was at Oracle for 11 years. I was doing the same job at Oracle, a solution engineer, only they called it a solution consultant. But basically, it was the same thing. And then prior to that, going back to our Siebel days, even though we may be dating ourselves, I actually I was working for an implementation partner. Okay. So very similar to what you're doing here, obviously. Okay. Yes, so I started out with a consulting background and was actually implementing the software. And then when I moved to Oracle, I started in the solution engineering role, which to me is really... it's really the fun part to me, because we get to show our customers the art of the possible. Yeah. And I get to come in pre-sales and show them how they could achieve their mission, especially in public sector, and how they can use technology to serve their citizens better. But then we just hand that over to you, and that's where you guys pick up, which, for me, that's great. Yeah, so
that's fair. Okay. So have you always been mostly in the government space with your clients, like back when you worked for an SI, and now obviously you are, but has it been mostly government oriented?
So when I came to Oracle, I was exclusively public sector, and then here at Salesforce, I'm exclusively public sector. When I was with a consulting partner, we actually did commercial. We actually did all kinds of customers. So I had some government customers, I had some commercial customers, and then prior to coming to that implementation partner, I was actually at a company in Boulder, Colorado, and they were a Siebel customer. So that's really how I got my start, was actually being a customer. And in fact, I don't really want to date myself like this, but that company was one of Siebel's first 100 customers that they ever had. So cool. I have actually worked with every version of Siebel CRM up until I left Oracle. So, and I'm happy to be over at Salesforce now. And so it's been a roller coaster ride, definitely.
Yeah. So how was the transition to Salesforce coming from the Oracle side of the house? Tell me about that.
That transition was great, actually. Yeah. I am a huge Siebel fan. I always have been. And Oracle was kind of phasing that out. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for something that would replace that. And the products that Oracle had at the time didn't. And so Salesforce really is the first product that I found that's really matches Siebel. It's metadata-driven architecture. It's configuration, not code, which is great for me, not having a traditional technical background. It's good to be able to get in, get my hands dirty. I know enough to be dangerous, I like to say, and but still be able to get the job done. So it's been a great transition at Salesforce, and of course I love the company. I love their values. I love the just
Ohana.
the opportunities. Yes, the Ohana, but also the opportunities with all of the different groups and everything, that if you want to go further, you can. And it doesn't matter if you're a woman, a man, whatever it is, you've got those opportunities, which is great.
So you mentioned non-traditional.
Non-traditional.
Shall we back out? Because
Yep.
we could, like I said, you and I were chatting a little bit before the podcast started, and I think the conversation with someone like you can really go a lot of different ways. I think what's may be interesting about you, which I'm excited to hear, is your career pathway and sort of what was your education background kind of coming to where you are now, because you said non-traditional, so now we got to hear it.
Right. Yeah, so I actually don't have a college degree.
Okay.
I spent a year
so what
at college.
happened post high school?
Well, so I
there.
spent a year at college,
Okay.
and then just decided that it really wasn't for me. Quit college, and then was just working some odd jobs and things, and I ended up getting married, and moved to Colorado. I'm a Nebraska girl at heart. Grew up in Nebraska, and then moved to Colorado. And I was actually working at the company that I mentioned that was one of Siebel's first 100 customers. I was actually working as a receptionist in the HR department. And in the HR department, I moved into to a benefits analyst type role. And they were in the process of implementing some new HR software, and they didn't have any IT support. And so they were having a hard time getting this software implemented. And this was while I was still the receptionist. So I said, well, I'm a quick learner, and if you want to tell me, if you want to show me what to do, I'll help you out. So they did, and learned to program that way. It was actually written in Revelation, and so learned to do that. And then I moved from the HR department to the sales department, and they were looking to implement an SFA product, Salesforce Automation, which was the beginning of CRM. So when I got over there, I said, I just did this over at HR. If you'd like me to help out over here, again, I'm a quick learner.
So you offered yourself.
I did.
Okay,
I did.
nice.
And so, they were still evaluating software packages, so I got to be in on all of that, and I kind of turned myself into a business analyst. And then was doing a business analyst type role for them as we chose the software, as we started to implement it. And then there was 2 developers that were actually developing Siebel at the time, and oddly enough, it was a woman and a man. Okay. The man felt like it was beneath him, honestly, to configure things, not code things, had that mindset. And so my friend Jennifer was left doing everything, and I said, hey, I did this over at HR. I could help you out. And so she's like, yeah, let's teach you this stuff. And I started from there, and actually that kind of jump-started me into where I'm at today, and I never looked back. Yeah. So,
do you consider yourself pretty technical?
I actually don't consider myself that technical. I really do use I'm technical enough to be dangerous. And I guess if I really stop to think about it, yeah, I do have some technical skills. I know, a lot of the things that I need to know in order to do this job, obviously, or I wouldn't be doing it as long as I have. But, I think the great thing about cloud technology today is you don't have to have that really hardcore tech background. And especially for a more business analyst role, if you're into implementation, with my role with sales engineering, it's more about the soft skills than it is really about the technical skills. You have to know some of the technical stuff, but I think it's more important to have some of those soft skills, being able to listen. What is your client really wanting? Because a lot of the times they can't even voice to you what they want. So it's a lot of different, they don't know what they don't know, right? So it's a lot of listening and trying to determine what is it that is your mission and where are you trying to go with this. And then having enough technical knowledge to turn that into, oh, okay, I understand where we're going. Let me show you how technology can help you get there. And I know you do that in your implementation role, so we have that in common.
We do have that in common, and what we don't have in common is I was probably like that guy. So I actually started doing web development, like hardcore web development, moved into Siebel, And the funny thing was, this is going to date, but I looked on Monster.com. Do you remember Monster for jobs?
I do remember Monster.
And I remember let me just check out this whole Siebel thing, because I was asked to be part of this brand new team that was handpicked. There was like 5 or 6 people that were handpicked to be on the Siebel team, and I was like, let me just check out Monster Jobs, and I was like, hey, there's a lot of cool job opportunities here. Yeah. So jumped into it, and I'm like, oh, there's no code? It's configuration. I was probably more like that guy.
That was a huge shift for a lot of people.
It really was. Yeah. And then I ended up getting all of the eScript assignments. Do you remember eScript?
Yep, I do.
So anyways, that's how I started.
That was what I would run from.
Yeah.
I would turn to you and go, okay, you do this.
Do that.
I'll do this configuration over here, and you go do that.
So that's pretty funny to hear you say that, because I'm like, that's so relatable, but I'm probably the guy in that story. So that's cool. So I think you brought up a good point about people, skills, and things like that people don't realize is really an important role in technology. I can say that it's something I love about my job, being able to talk to a ton of people, really try to understand what they're after, understand their goals. What would you say is has been super rewarding for you in this career path, at various maybe milestones throughout your career? What's rewarding? For me, I love that. I love being able to constantly be learning about a new client, a new business process, a new technology, and Salesforce keeps coming out with great things, and it's just never a dull moment. And absolutely. I get to talk to people, I get to figure out how technology works, I get to solve problems, and for me, that's super rewarding to see my client have success at the end of it. But anyways, I wanted to hear from you on that, because
Yeah, no, I think I would mirror exactly what you're saying. To me, I love being in front of the customer. I love talking to customers. I love evangelizing Salesforce and how great it is, how easy it is, and how it can really help you solve your problems that you're dealing with in your agency. Because, as a taxpayer, right, we want to do business with government the same way we do business with Amazon or with Uber. I want to be able to get on my mobile app and, and do things. And government has been very slow to adopt any of that technology. And so for me, it's fulfilling to be able to show them that art of the possible. You don't have to do things the same way you've been doing them for the last 40 years. I realize they have worked up till now, but the world is moving in a different direction. So we need to be able to get you some of these technologies, and you can't take 2 or 3 years to implement these things. So it's a very agile environment now, and so we have to be able to do things in sprints and get some quick wins, get some wins on the board where people can actually see progress, and then be successful from there. So I love being in front of the customer, listening and figuring out where is it that you're really trying to get to, and then helping them see how they can get to. And then of course we get to pass that off to great implementation partners like you, where you actually take them over the finish line. The one thing I do like to do with my customers is stay in touch with them. I don't want to just sell them and walk out the door and never see them again, because I also like to celebrate their successes, and I want to make sure that that they're able to get to where they want to be. And selfishly, as a taxpayer, I want them to succeed. We all want them to succeed, because if they don't, we're wasting our own money. So
that's one thing I'm curious about, because you've been in the government space for a fair amount of time. How have you seen people's reactions in the government space, the clients themselves, responding to and being adoptive to your ideas, these fresh ideas that are coming from Salesforce or other technologies over the course of time? I feel like, having been with that same set of user types, I'm just curious, have they changed? Has the reaction changed when you talk to them about what the art of the possible is?
Right. Yeah. It's funny because we are still talking about some of the same concepts today that we were talking back when we were selling Siebel. Mm-hmm. And so, obviously it's been slow to change. Government is always slow to change. They're very risk averse. Yep. So I want to make sure that, we're not getting too far out there, because we want to make sure that people have done it first. So I would say the reaction is mixed. Really? You get some people, and, they tend to be younger people that are coming into state jobs and wanting these more modern apps, and they're willing to jump on the bandwagon and, you know, let's implement some of this stuff versus some of the older, more established developers who have been working on mainframe technologies and some of that kind of thing, who are a little more resistant to change. But it's honestly, it's not unlike when we started selling SFA software to salespeople.
True.
You know, they were looking at it like, oh, Big Brother is watching. I'm not going to do that. And you know, and it's the norm today for salespeople. You have to put in your activities. You have to track your opportunities. You know, those types of things. So. It's a mixed reaction, I would say.
I guess that makes sense that it would be that way, and it would continue to evolve. And the conversations with the clients are still similar use cases, or are they still some of the same use cases?
They
over the
are
years?
some of the use cases, the same use cases, because it's all about how do we serve our citizens better. And government really is having to keep up with the change now because, you know, like I said, if I can order from Amazon and it can be here tomorrow, then why can't I apply for my benefits and have a decision right away? You know, and so I think governments are entities are forced to change, but they really do want to help their citizens. So that's the great thing, is that you've got some great servants in public sector that want to do the right thing. And so, you know, it's changing, and it's changing for the better. So. It's good.
That's good to know. I'm happy to hear that as a taxpayer.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it's true. There's always somebody. There's got to be a tip of the spear or a champion for change at any organization that's going to be willing to kind of take it to the next level, whatever that next level is, I guess, for them.
Yeah, and sometimes it's small steps. But those small steps can make a huge difference. And it really is somebody that's willing to take that risk. I mean, I was talking about my career, and, you know, the one thing about my career was I was always willing to go, hey, I'll do it, and not be afraid to fail if I did. And I think you have to have the same thing in government agencies. You have to have that person that's willing to take that risk and kind of stick their neck out a little bit, be that evangelist to say, hey, we can get there. Let me show you the roadmap to get there. And for me, that's great to work with those people because you can show them that roadmap and help them along that way.
Cool, I love it. So let's shift the conversation a little bit. Woman in technology. I'm just curious. Over the course of your career, maybe it was more so when you were working for the implementer, maybe a little bit less. I don't know what sales organization was like at Oracle. Did you find yourself being like the sole girl in the room? Like, I mean, did you get?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I was curious about that.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I just honestly, for me, I really don't give it that much thought, because, you know, I just feel like I can do anything that anybody else can, and I'm just gonna go for it. But looking back, when I have to, you know, reflect and look back, a lot of the times I was the only woman in the room. I know when I worked for the implementer, I was, you know, the pay wasn't equal. I felt like I had to work twice as hard sometimes, but you know, it worked out in the end, which is one of the great things I love, obviously, about Salesforce is they recognize that. They go back and they make sure that everyone is being paid equal, regardless of who you are, whether you're a man, woman, whoever you are. So,
I tend to be pretty similar, where I've had questions where, because I am a woman and I am in technology, people will say, oh, well, you know, did you have these big challenges, and did you like face, I don't know, specific resistance because you were a woman in a man's world and technology? And I'm not one to also notice things, but I look back and there are probably a few defining moments where I'm like, oh yeah, I sometimes I will walk in a room and there's like all men, and
Absolutely.
I'm like, okay, wow, and it stands out for you for that moment. But when you have the confidence, you realize you can hold your own, you know this just as much as the next guy or girl, it becomes, I also don't really dwell on it, so I'm always, when people ask me that, I'm like, let me think of a story. Like I can't, you know, I know a few things happened. I remember when I started my career at Capgemini, I was interviewed by a woman, and then after I got the job, she kind of reached out. She was like a mentor for me, which I thought was awesome. and she kind of called it out, and she said, you are going to be around a lot of men, and when you sit at the table and you're defining a solution, you need to make sure your voice is heard. And I remember thinking, like, I didn't really think about it, but I guess I do need to try extra hard to make sure that my voice or my opinion or my solution ideas or whatever are heard, because she had said, sometimes people just sort of cower back, or if the conversation gets too much, they don't want to, force their way in, because we tend to be like, oh, we'll let you guys got it. If you got it, you got it,
Right.
So that was probably, I've had a few like moments like that where someone's kind of called attention to it. But I'm kind of like you, where I'm just sort of like, I don't notice it a whole lot.
Yeah.
Have you had any defining moments like that?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of actually the first company I was working for when I was helping develop, and we had a TAM at that time, a technical account manager. And he was a guy out of San Francisco, a little bit arrogant, a little bit full of himself. And he walked in on his weekly visit or monthly visit, whatever it was. And I remember he walked in and he looked at me and he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, Jennifer needed some help, so I'm helping." And he's like, "You are coding?" I'm like, well, I wouldn't really call it coding. I thought it was configuring. And he kind of took a step back and he was like, well, okay, yes, it is configuring, but and at the time I didn't really relate that to me as being a woman. But yeah, I have had a few times like that where they look at you like, what are you doing here again? And for me, I guess I've always just kind of brushed that off and went ahead and presented my ideas. And at the end of the day, when they figured out that I actually did have some good ideas, then it was fine. I know I had a customer once when I was at the implementation partner that I was working at, and I was the business analyst there, and we had a gentleman that was the project manager, and he wanted to do everything. And so he was talking to the client about some requirements that they had, and he was just not getting what they were saying. So they pulled me aside and they said, can we please tell you what we want, because he's not listening to us. And I said, yeah, sure. So they started explaining to me the requirements, and I tend to listen more. I don't speak up right away. I'm just going to listen and let you tell me what you want, and then once I figure out where it is you're going, then I'll start giving you some ideas. So I'm very quiet to start off with, and so I just listened to what they were talking about and said, okay, so sounds to me like this is what you're trying to do, and basically replayed back to them, only in a technology way. Here's what you're trying to do. And the guy threw up his hands and he said, the guy's name was Jim, our project manager, why does he not get this? Like, I've been spending days with him, and I spent about a half an hour with you, and you just get this. So that's why I think the job that I do now is a lot more about the soft skills than it is, you got to have the technical stuff, but the soft skills are what's really important. So communication, listening, understanding, don't just jump in with an idea, listen to the whole thing, because your idea might change once you hear the entire story. So
cool. I completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree. Man or woman, that's good advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not just a gender thing. That's this is the way we should be doing business thing.
So for women, are there any specific, I get asked this a lot, so I'm going to have to ask you,
Sure.
But what advice do you give women that are in technology or position, business, in general? Do you give them would you have any words of wisdom or advice for women in the workforce?
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually words of advice, but again, I go back to, listen more than you speak. Understand where someone is trying to get to. Because your perspective may change once you hear the entire story. It's just going to make your ideas that much more solid, and your solutions, more technically sound when you have the entire background. So, but also be willing to step in. I think that sometimes as women we tend to sit back. I know, as I said, I tend to listen. So, if I'm sitting in a room full of people, I'm probably not going to be the one that's front and center and voicing all of my opinions. But when it gets to that time, be willing to step up, be willing to make sure that your voice is heard, as you said, because they may be going down a path that they shouldn't be going down. So
no, it's good. That's good stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, one of the things I say a lot, and I'm sure you would agree, is everything you just said. But in addition to that, is just to tack on would be really knowing your material, because like I think that when you have that confidence that like I understand this, and you spend the time, to really develop that skill. Which you have, then you go into that room and you have every ounce of confidence to speak up when the time is right and you've listened and you've done all those things. But if you don't have that confidence, then you know what I mean? If you don't know your craft, if you don't know the practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then that's kind of the added thing is like, don't shy away from it. Like make sure you jump in there and really understand the technology. So that is, leads me to another question for you. How do you stay current on technology? I mean, Salesforce is constantly changing things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. What do you do? How do you, what is your tips on that?
I think it's just, as you mentioned, do your research, right? I mean, Salesforce comes out with 3 releases a year. It is tough to keep up with everything that is coming out. I mean, obviously Trailhead, we always talk about Trailhead, right? Which has all of the latest and greatest things that you could ever learn about Salesforce. But it is true. I mean, stay current with your certifications. Take the release, read the release notes, and then take the maintenance test so that you can stay current on that stuff. But it is a challenge. I mean, I had the same challenge at Oracle. We were buying companies left and right, and you had to keep up with all of the things that were going on. And it can be difficult. But I think as women, we tend to juggle those things and can multitask maybe a little bit better than some people. So yeah, I think it's just, take advantage of the resources that your company offers, whatever those resources are, and make sure that you're staying current with that.
Okay, so we do this thing at the end of the podcast called a use case of the day. In the past, it's been a business challenge, but because we're talking about your non-standard career path, which I love, by the way, if there was a student who's in college, maybe they're a year away from graduation, what, they're thinking about, what do I do next? I'm not really sure. They don't have a job lined up quite yet, but they have, some possibilities. What would you give them as the advice to sort of as they look ahead into that last year of school?
Yeah, I mean, I think my advice would be, don't just jump on the first thing because you don't think that anything else will come along. And that's easier said than done, obviously, because when you're looking for a job, it's like, oh, I have to take this, or I feel like I'm not going to get anything else. But really just maybe take a breath, take a step back. Think about what it is that really excites you and really makes you passionate. And if it's not the job offer that you're getting, because, it's an accounting job, for example, nothing against accounting, but there are some people who don't, that doesn't excite them, right? So if you're getting a job offer for something in accounting and it's not making you excited, then maybe you want to take a breath, maybe you want to take a step back and reevaluate, is that really what I want to do? And just start looking for those opportunities that are out there. And don't be afraid to take something that maybe seems a little bit non-traditional. You don't have to always go the traditional route, and I think that's great about just the technology sector today. It doesn't have to be that traditional journey, but you have to be willing to step up and take those opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing, it's not exactly in this use case, but one thing I've said to students is don't chase the opportunity, don't chase the money or the title. Right. Those things they're not going to give you the long-term gains, and you'll be so much happier when you chase
And if you are happy, those things will follow.
Exactly.
Those things will follow.
Yep. So I like how you said, raise your hand, go out there and do it.
and don't be afraid of failure. I mean, nobody likes to fail, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to take a step back to take, 2 or 3 steps forward. So again, kind of going that non-traditional route. You don't have to take the first thing that comes up. So.
I agree. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. That's the end of today. I appreciate you stopping by the office and hanging out.
Well, thank you for having me, and I will see you at Dreamforce next week.
Yes, I can't wait.